Did someone just say betrayal? We've all been there. You trust someone, you open up to them, and then they turn around and stab you in the back. That kinda sucks. Welcome to the Bible Project. Today, we're going to look at Joseph's betrayal and redemption found in Genesis chapters 37 through 50. Let us dive in. They hate him so much that they sell him to some passing traders who take him to Egypt. Now, I know this sounds like a terrible situation, but stick with me here, because this is where things get interesting. But instead, he took responsibility for the other prisoners' well-being and ended up interpreting their dreams. In fact, he interpreted the dreams of two fellow prisoners who were also in jail because they were in the wrong place at the right time. As predicted, Joseph is able to save Egypt from total destruction because he prepared them for it. They don't recognize Joseph, but Joseph knows exactly who they are. He wipes away their tears, gives them nice clothes, and introduces them to Pharaoh. First, the story of Joseph shows us that God is in control, even when things are really unfair. Joseph didn't deserve to be betrayed by his brothers, or to end up in prison, but God used those circumstances to make Joseph into a leader who saved an entire nation. Maybe you were set up by a jealous coworker, or you were blamed for something that was broken, even though you didn't break it. In the meantime, check out this video on forgiveness, or this other video on Joseph. Thanks for watching. How did you handle that situation? Did you try to get revenge, or did you take the high road and forgive? What if your response was what separated you from success? I'm reminded of the story of a man who was wrongfully fired from his job. Even though he was innocent, he spent his time in jail learning as much as possible about the company that he worked for. After he got out, he started a small business that ended up becoming a huge competitor to that company. Or think of Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison because he was a political threat to the South African government. While in prison, Mandela decided to forgive those who imprisoned him. And upon his release, he became the president of South Africa. Second, Joseph teaches us that forgiveness can lead to unexpected blessings. Yes, Joseph's brothers wronged him in a major way, but he forgave them, and that led to them being saved from the famine and their family being united again. And if you think this story has any more plot twists left, just wait till next week's video. At first, he plays a little game with them, basically testing them to see if they'd treat him well after all these years. But then he reveals himself to them, and honestly, their reaction is pretty good. Imagine if Joseph had held on to his anger and bitterness. He wouldn't have been able to forgive his brothers or to lead Egypt during the famine. Sometimes we need to let go of our pain and anger so that we can be used by God to help others. They're shocked, but they admit what they did was wrong. They apologize and ask for forgiveness. Joseph even forgives them, saying it was actually God's plan all along. He explains that although they meant to hurt him, God used that to save the lives of many people. Also, word spreads throughout the region about how wise and prosperous Egypt is, including to Joseph's family in Canaan. They were the cupbearer and the baker to the king. The cupbearer was released and went back to serving wine to Pharaoh. The baker was executed. So Joseph stayed in prison, but he was hopeful that once his own dream was interpreted, things would finally turn around for him too. We meet Joseph in Genesis chapter 37. He's favored by his dad Jacob, which makes his older brothers jealous. The big plot twist in this story is that Joseph ends up in prison, not because he did anything wrong, but because he was framed. See, when he was brought to Egypt, he was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Joseph ended up rising to the position of second in command in Potiphar's household, but then he was framed by his boss's wife. When she couldn't get Joseph to sleep with her, she accused him of trying to assault her. And even though he was innocent, he ended up in prison. Now, Joseph could have played the victim, sulked in his cell, and complained about how unfair his situation was. Fast forward a few chapters, and Pharaoh has a disturbing dream, one that none of his wise men can interpret. Remember the cupbearer from earlier? He tells Pharaoh that there's a prisoner who can interpret dreams. So Pharaoh brings Joseph in, and Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream. Basically, there is going to now be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Joseph suggests that he should be put in charge of planning for the famine years. Pharaoh loved this idea, appoints Joseph to the task, and Joseph gets everything ready just in case. 7 years go by, crops are gathered and stored, and then suddenly, 7 years of famine hit. Here's the ultimate plot twist. Joseph's brothers come to Egypt to buy food, and then in classic Joseph fashion, he takes care of his family. In the meantime, let's talk about some themes. Now, we can learn from Joseph's example and apply it to our lives today. I'll close with this modern twist. Think of a time when you were framed or blamed for something you didn't do. All right, thanks for watching. I hope this modern application was helpful. If you want more, please leave a comment below.